I had my first craft show of the year this past weekend, and honestly, it did not go how I expected. So I want to walk you through what went into it, what actually happened, and what I learned. If you've ever thought about doing a market or a craft show, this episode is for you. Hey friend, welcome back to Sparkle and Shine. I'm your host, Cassandra, and this is the podcast where we talk about building a small business, chasing your dreams, and learning the real lessons along the way. Each week, I'll be sharing what I'm learning in my own business, the wins, the struggles, and the lessons that come along with it. So if you're building something of your own too, you're definitely in the right place. All right, let's get into today's episode. All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking all about my first craft show of the year, the prep work behind it, the reality of what actually happened, and the lessons I can take going forward. So, this was an indoor craft show, and it's still pretty early in the season here. If you live in Minnesota, you'd know that the weather can be pretty unpredictable this time of year. Either we're getting a ton of snow, or it's super sunny and beautiful, or it's raining. Take your pick. But the day of this craft show, it was like 75 degrees outside, which is definitely not normal. It's usually around 40 degrees this time of year. So it was absolutely gorgeous outside. Before we talk about what actually happened on craft show day, let's talk about what it took to get there. There's a whole lot of prep work involved. First, there's physical prep. I had to restock pieces, do an inventory count, organize my stock, and make a bunch of new tags. It truly was a labor of love and a whole heck of a lot of work. Moving on with my prep work, there's my booth prep. That means I'm planning my booth layout. How do I want my tables to be set up? What products am I bringing with me? How do I want to change how things look from previous events? I also ended up making a couple new signs for in my booth, as well as making sure that my shopping bags were stuffed with business cards and promo materials to make things quick and easy on show day. If you listened to last week's episode, you heard me talk all about how I'm implementing systems into my business. Well, that includes systems to help me with my prep work. So I used a checklist to keep me on track with all of my prep tasks, but I also use a checklist for packing to make sure that nothing gets forgotten and left behind. This is where those systems really came into play and made my life a lot easier and less stressful while preparing for the craft show. And the last part of prep work is probably the most important. That's mental prep. I had to prepare myself to talk to strangers. Sometimes I find it a little bit awkward to keep small talk going and talking to people that I am not super familiar with. So, what I did was I created some talking points for myself, like a basic script that I can fall back on if I'm not too sure what to say. And then I also created myself a little cheat sheet for my essential colors and the meanings behind each color. That way, when my customers are browsing and they really like a certain color, we can talk about the meaning behind that color. But overall, I was really just trying to prepare myself so that I could show up confidently. All right, so let's talk about what actually happened on craft show day. So, first, let me say that all of my prep work came in handy because I did not have to stay up super late the night before finishing things up. Many times, the night before a craft show, I'm up until 2:30 in the morning trying to finish preparing everything. But this time, I actually used my systems to plan ahead, use my time wisely, and get it done before 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so back to the morning of the craft show. We get to the venue, we get all unloaded and everything inside. It was a pretty smooth setup, and I'd say I had a pretty good booth space. One positive thing that happened in the morning was when the organizer had showed me to my space, she complimented me on my TikToks. She actually said, "Oh, hey, I love watching your TikToks. They always make me feel so happy." So that was a nice way to start my day, actually. But as the day continued on, there was a little bit of a reality shift here. The foot traffic was slow. Now, I've done a lot of events with this organizer, and majority of her events are pretty steady, and they have a similar flow of traffic through each of them. But this day was completely different. The weather was definitely impacting how many people were walking through the craft show. It's almost like everyone wanted to be outside enjoying the sunshine because it was just so unseasonably warm. I'm pretty sure that they said we broke a temperature record for the day. So yeah, I don't blame them for wanting to be outside. In fact, I was sitting there thinking I'd rather be outside, and that's what I did at the end of the day. Is I went home and I sat on the steps with my husband watching the sunset. I did end up making a handful of sales, mostly to my mom. She always comes through for me. She's my number one supporter, and I wouldn't be where I am today without her. But I did make a couple sales in addition to her purchase. And all in all, for the day, I sold about 10 essential color bracelets. But what does that mean numbers wise? After I account for my booth fee and my cost of goods sold, I ended up with about $13 profit. That means I earned about $1.63 an hour. If you've been listening and you're wondering, what can I learn from all of this? Here are 3 lessons that I'm taking forward with me. Lesson number 1 is prep equals confidence. When you take the time to prepare your booth layout, your talking points, any of the number of things that I listed off when we were talking about prep, it's going to help you reduce your stress levels, reduce the chaos that's actually going to happen on craft show or market day, as well as it's going to allow you to focus on connecting with your customers instead of worrying about all the moving pieces behind the scenes, because you've already prepared for this. The prep work allows you to show up instead of scrambling. Lesson number 2, not everything is in your control. So this is a big one, especially if we think about weather. Obviously, we cannot control the weather, but it affects you if you're doing indoor events or outdoor events. When we think about indoor events, if the weather is, let's say, really crappy, it's like a blizzard and negative 20 degrees outside. Well, your foot traffic is likely to be low for that because not as many people are willing to go out of their house. But then when you get like those really unseasonably warm spring days like we just had, everybody wants to be outdoors. They don't want to be cooped up in their house. They don't want to be going to an event indoors. They want to be outside enjoying the sunshine while it's there. But if you do outdoor events, obviously you're going to run into weather as well, because now we're talking thunderstorms, rainstorms, high wind, any number of weather related events. Like, that's not in our control. And we have to remember that sometimes the problem isn't you, it's the situation that we're in. We can't always control it. We just have to roll with the punches. And lesson number 3, protect your mindset. In the past, I have been at events that have had either low foot traffic or just slower sales in general. And when I'm alone in the booth, that's when my thoughts tend to spiral. And I start to beat myself up, even if it's out of my control. But this time, my husband was with me, and that really helped ground my thoughts, and I didn't beat myself up over it. Sometimes you just need one person there with you. It helps keep those spiraling thoughts at bay. Even though I didn't make as much as I hoped for at this craft show, I'm not looking at this as a loss. I truly believe that every single event is a gamble. We can make goals all we want, but there are no guarantees. And remember, weather will always play a role in the foot traffic. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to make the most out of the experience. And speaking of experiences, recently I have noticed quite a few different vendors online complaining about how their events have gone. And I believe you should be authentic and true to yourself. However, I do believe that there is a difference between sharing how things went and actually complaining about it. So, if your first instinct is to complain online and talk about how a craft show was a bust, I want you to pause right there and remember that it's not just your own audience that is seeing your posts. When these complaints get put out online, event organizers see that, and that could impact your future opportunities as well as repel people who might have been your future customers. I don't know if this is true for you or if it's just me, but seeing someone complain about an event has never made me actually want to turn around and buy something from them. So instead of complaining, I would much rather focus on learning and what I can actually improve. That's where I would put my energy. I typically like to ask myself after any event whether I felt like it was successful or not. What can I learn from this? And how can I do it better next time? I just think that's a much better way to use your energy than to spend it complaining. So let's chat about what I would do differently next time. Starting with conversations. I don't always know how to talk to people that I don't know. So small talk can feel really awkward or like I don't know what to say. And then I also feel like I need to find my pitch. I don't want to feel super salesy like a mall kiosk salesperson. I want to sell in a way that feels natural. So, what I'm going to work on is practicing those conversations, going over my talking points more before my next event. And then I'm going to continue to work on finding my own version of selling, that little happy balance in between not selling at all and being the aggressive salesperson. If you're just getting started out with doing events, I want to let you know that your first event will not be perfect, and that's okay. You actually learn more by doing, going through those actions, trying to figure out where you can improve. That's going to build your clarity. It's going to build your confidence. There's no such thing as perfect. So all we can do is just keep going and asking ourselves, what can I learn from this? And how can I do it better next time? All right, here's your challenge this week. I want you to take one step towards putting yourself out there. That could be applying for a market or craft show. It could be sending that email to your audience. Or it could be sending me a DM on Instagram to introduce yourself and your business. Pretty much anything that's going to put yourself and your business out there. Well, that's all for today, friend. Thanks for hanging out and listening, and I hope you'll join me again next week for another chat. Until next time, keep showing up with heart, believe in yourself, and keep shining.